From Accord, this is From Vendorship to Partnership, a show where we dive into the realities of scaling startups. This season, Accord's CEO, Ross Rich, chats with the next generation of startup founders about the ups and downs of signing their first customers while building a repeatable, collaborative sales process.
Hey, Bar. Good to see you, man. Thanks for joining our Founders Journey series and sharing a story about getting started with Balance. Appreciate you joining.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, to kick things off, maybe we can dive right into it. Would love to hear the founding story, the decision to leave what you were doing before, all the awesome things kind of in that path of your life to start Balance. And maybe you can give everyone kind of a quick overview of what Balance is as part of that answer, but I'll pass the mic off to you here.
Amazing. So, I think the story starts at PayPal. Me and my co-founder, Yoni, met at PayPal. We were on the intersection between risks, product, and strategy. Yoni was more on the data science side. Then I wanted to learn how to build things. So I joined a startup called Behalf, which tried to build something like a firm for B2B. Mm-hmm. It was the early days of B2B e-commerce. And then, actually, from a personal pain of mine, my father had cancer, took a lot of time to see an oncologist. So me and Yoni decided to build a company around bottlenecks to see a physician. So we did things like to predict who will become a no-show and what should be the optimal appointment length. We did that with big HMOs, and then we decided we don't want to spend the next 7 years selling to healthcare providers.
That was a tough space to sell into and work in. I totally agree with you, yes.
Intense. Let me tell you, that's intense. So it was a hard decision, but we knew we had a lot of passion for fintech from obviously our previous careers. So we started to build a concept that now is Balance. The idea behind Balance, or the process, was just an attempt to aggregate insights from the time at PayPal and Behalf. And in that point, we understood that probably the biggest pain we saw in the world is that a B2B payment experience online is shit. So we didn't know really. Yeah, you know it from the other side of the process. But the concept of ordering something online as a business, it's or not existent or a very, very high friction. And we saw that B2B e-commerce started to be bigger and bigger and bigger. So we asked the question, can we make something that people want? Like, can we do something that people feel like, I don't know, it's delightful, like something that makes you excited? And you know it better than me, but Stripe, I think the power of Stripe, when I think about Stripe, and it's inspiration for me in the last 7 years of my career, was that the internet is going crazy about the experience of implementing Stripe. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like I have to create something that has that sentiment, that feeling. So we just said, okay, let's first decide that we're going to build the first checkout experience for businesses online. Let's try to make something that on the receiving side is simple as a credit card, right? And on the paying side, on the business buying experience side, is something that gives you all the flexibility you need from the offline space to make it easy to do the transition and to enable merchant to scale B2B payments. So that was the area we wanted to focus on. And we created just a prototype, obviously talked to a lot of customers and started at YC. At the beginning, it was easy. Like, we said, okay, we're going to take an API approach, and we're going to ask, what is your biggest pain point? And we're going to create an API to help you solve it, right? Like, super straightforward, super dumb in that sense. We did few iterations, and then we figured out that it seems like the checkout should be built on top of the APIs just because it was so painful for them to create it themselves. So
you're starting giving them the API, expecting them to build the software layer on top of it, like Stripe, but you're finding that with business to business approach, they need that secondary layer, not just the API, but also the product experience for you to provide. Okay.
Yeah, it was a pain just to build it. They wanted it to be end. They wanted to eliminate the problem. And I did the first step, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So what we did was relatively simple. We took our own APIs and created a white label checkout experience, really similar to the Stripe approach. That did two simple things. Maybe not simple, but two straightforward things. One is to enable a business buyer to pay however he wants. So you can get a self-serve invoice, you can pay with a check or wire, you can pay with an ACH or card. The balance layer makes it really easy to process it on the merchant side because he gets paid the same way all the time. So we collect checks and credit it to his account. We do the NSF risk on ACH and provide the ACH instantly. We reconcile between invoice and incoming payments. We do all of that and create one seamless paying experience. The second element is to pay with terms. So this is also something that is very, very business oriented, and it's very inherent to how you do payments. In B2C, it's a nice to have. In B2B, it's part of negotiation. Yeah. It's super, super important. So we wanted to make it amazingly simple. So again, created this white labeled approach in a process that takes between 6 to 8 seconds. We approve buyers for net 30, net 60, or to pay the 16 of each month because this is where they pay all the vendors. But the merchant is getting paid instantly. So when you combine those two together, the experience on the buyer side is like pay however he wants and in the time that he needs to pay. And on the receiving side, he gets paid easily and instantly like a card payment. And everything is wrapped in like a consumer grade type of approach. And we started to be more and more known as like the checkout experience. And this is where we just double down on checkout and say, we're the checkout platform, and went with it.
Awesome. So yeah, just to summarize all of that, because it sounds like it's been quite the journey. So you started out at PayPal for years and had this insight with your co-founder. Instead of jumping straight to balance, you had this in-between time where you probably picked up a lot of things as, not necessarily in the same space, but as a founder to figure out, how do you go to market? How do you figure this kind of stuff out? Because that's its own learning outside of just the industry expertise. Kind of following your passion of helping your family out there. And then it was like, okay, this market is very, they're not the early adopter type folks in that space. I definitely hear you there. And you were still passionate about the fintech side of things and saw that there was this huge gap, not necessarily on the B2C side of things, a lot of progress there across Stripe, PayPal, et cetera, but actually on the B2B side. And yeah, it sounds like kind of that lean startup approach of, okay, we're going to build this straightforward thing first, go to market with it. Okay, this is the second thing we need to add on. Okay, and then you very quickly got there in terms of finding something that a lot of people were excited about, right?
Yeah, and I think the first iteration with the healthcare startup was, in hindsight, we know that we did a progress in our relationship that was so priceless.
Like having the founders?
Yeah.
Listen,
yes, it was so significant. Wow. And now I know that this is something that it's just something that needs to happen. It will happen if you like it or not. So it was just a great boot camp to just, develop this ongoing communication. And communication is like by far the biggest challenge, and our relationship is so precious, the way the company works and just for the day-to-day. So I think this is our superpower today. 100%.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And that's what we're trying to get to, these like small things that aren't talked about on this Founder Journey series, is like, what are the things that really make or break companies? And it's not necessarily the product hunt launch or getting into Y Combinator, these big things of the seed round. It is the relationships, right? It's those first, 2, 3, 5, 10 people that are working on the company for those years that no one talks about, right? It's like, oh, we launched and everything was easy after that. Well, what about the first 2, 3 years of like all the learnings and the trenches and the high highs and the low lows? I totally think you're spot on there. And one thing just to share that we've actually done So I started a company with my brother Ryan, and we have another co-founder, Wayne, on the engineering side. And we actually see like a joint executive coach together, not just one off, but to help with these communications and bring up these things proactively. Because we didn't have those kind of 2 years like you did with your other founder to build that relationship. So I'm so glad that you touched on that point.
No, it's just, I always feel when, even when I'm doing hiring, there's the type of dynamics that make you feel like a 1+1=5. Mm-hmm. And the other ones that makes you feel like the 1+1 = like half, and for me and Yoni, it's, you see how this is being built up to the point when it's like 1+1=5. And it's amazing how effective that is. And yeah, like I'm really, really now, after the experience with Yoni, I know that there are people that brings out the best in me. And it's not about them, it's about us. And it's about the communication we have without words. Like who am I in this type of relationship? And this is what I'm trying to perfect always with my peers and with Yoni and every hire I do. And it's just so important.
Totally. That's a great point, and good time to maybe transition to the next big question is, okay, so you go out, you find this gap in the market that yourself and your co-founder and customers early on are passionate about. How do you go from turning this idea, this customer research, into your first 10 customers? I think that's an area that a lot of people don't discuss. And it just, it just happens. Oh, the market just loved it and we built the thing and they used it. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I think I can be very smart in hindsight. I think that the real process, I can, to be real, I think the process was, for me, it's all about relationships, always. And the way, it's really hard to bring value in the world today with such amazing companies around us and say, okay, we're better. We are a pre-seed company. Use us. We can bring so much value. It's a really hard pitch. It's a hard pitch to sell. So I'm selling myself. I'm selling a hard worker. I'm selling someone that will be obsessed on your problem and hopefully know the solution better than you. That's the only thing I'm trying to sell. I'm not selling like a fancy software or AI or like advanced payment technologies. I'm selling myself as an extension to your team. And I think, again, it's, I don't want to be so, structured after it happened. But, when I think and I'm doing my retrospect on me and Yoni, I think that was our approach. And probably a lot of the early momentum is we can contribute to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think some people, maybe because they're talking about, pitching this huge like TAM and this software they're selling. Yeah. I think there's a lot of confusion of like what gets you there, what gets you here isn't going to get you there. It's kind of like, okay. And I wish I leaned into this more as well. And just starting to kind of get there is, like you said, you're selling yourself, you're selling your insight, you're selling solving the problem. It doesn't necessarily need to be balanced with this technology. It's people are going to trust you, work with you for that. And then hopefully you win the opportunity to build with them your company and your software. I think that's a really good point where people kind of get ahead of themselves in those very early days where it needs to be this technology that adds so much value. It's you just being in the room or helping with them or that one tip or recommendation on the next person for them to hire or, that kind of thing, I think is really what people are looking for from, like you said, pre-seed companies.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Completely. I'm selling a service, not a product. And that's, I think, the key. Think long-term, think on the process and focus on learning. Everything is obvious, but I think that's the key for us.
Totally. Excuse my dog barking in the background there. Another question here is, where are you today? So you've come from, selling yourself and those, first customers, starting the second company with your founder. What is this year and kind of the future look like? I'm curious to hear kind of the longer term vision.
Yeah, that's a good point. So for us, the key thing until this point and probably the next year is to dominate the segment of the early adopters. The first iteration was, okay, we are aiming for everyone. Everyone that are doing B2B online, we're there. And I think what's the piece that it's really hard to price, to measure, is the cost of not putting enough focus on what you do. It's hard to understand the cost because you're saying, I don't know, those opportunities, let's go for it.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's now I know the pain of tackling different segments. So we decided to focus on the early adopters. And now we're going to dominate. We're going to take that early momentum and just double down. Yeah, just double down. We have the use cases. We understand the customer the best, and we want to try to be the leaders, to be the default. Again, with B2B marketplaces, because this is where we shine today, high growth B2B companies that are selling goods online. So that's one. Second is, you're starting to build the engine. You want to make sure you get it right before you create more channels, more business lines.
Yeah.
So for us, we're going to focus on that, making sure we understand it's predictable. It's something we can, that will give us the breathing space we need to open a new segment. Or in our case, we're going to focus on globalization, which is a big piece. Like how do you scale from the US to Canada, to the UK, to the EU? Those are big questions we're asking today. I think it's a great time to do scale up in the world. I think the infrastructure is there. So I'm optimistic, but it is a big challenge. But I'm excited about.
Awesome. No, I think you bring up such a good point, and something that, I'm constantly learning as well. Is, you start with this big vision. It's like, it could be anything. You don't have the product yet. You don't have the team yet. It's like, and you're kind of cutting down everything to win that first kind of foothold in the market. And this goes maybe good to the next question. I think personally, that takeaway, and it sounds like you learned this as well through your experiences, it maybe not even almost, it needs to be uncomfortable with the focus that you're picking. Like, it needs to be such small of a market compared to your vision that, like, that's got to be the measure of how focused you are. It needs to make you uncomfortable. I don't think we put ourselves in that position early enough to be like, this is as narrow as we're going to go. The use cases, the focus, the companies we're going to work with. So it sounds like a similar takeaway bar that we've had as well. But moving on to the last question, we got another couple of minutes here that I'm really curious, because that's kind of one of my big takeaways from the first couple of years with Accord. What would be the advice that you would give yourself when you were starting Balance? What's one piece of small advice that you think would have saved you, X amount of months or headaches or something like that? What would you tell yourself, a couple of years ago when you were getting started?
I think I will answer it from both sides. Like, what was the thing that I hope to say, it's a good idea, go with it and be confident. Mm-hmm. And the one that I think it's important to do from the beginning. So I'm just reiterating what we just said, but I do believe this is something we need to put emphasis on. Feel comfortable with thinking long-term. And it's not easy in the ecosystem of like growth. But if the process you're trying to do requires you to build infrastructure and to think in terms of journey and not a click, pay, done, doing it, will hurt your scale up efforts significantly. There are types of selling processes or type of sectors you need to think long term. You need to think strategic. You need to think in terms of journey. And I think for us, you're young, you're not experienced in those type of things, and you just want to show the metric goes up, which is true. It's important, but be comfortable with thinking long term, building infrastructure the right way.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, no pun intended, of like, okay, we want to do something big, but also in this world, you need to validate, you need to make progress every day, every week. And I think that's where that focus comes in, is like, okay, you can build that long-term momentum over being really narrow and building, kind of that.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, and the other side of it, which the thing we did well, which I want to say out loud because I think it's very important, don't hire without a very good reason. I think for us, our power and the power of every early company, which is like the superpower on top of those big companies, is focus and agility. And for us, we didn't do like the classic hires of like, doing like fast hiring of building like different departments to start scaling like different areas in the organization. We wanted to see the pain before we hire a person to do it. And I think it gave us a lot of focus and really eased the onboarding process, because people are coming to war. They're not coming to like, okay, let's start and think about how to build a marketing.
No, the need is there. We got to get this done.
Yeah. Which I like.
Totally. Well, appreciate you taking the time for this session. I think this was super insightful. Anything that you want to leave folks with, any tips or thoughts, or how to get in touch with you, Bar?
Oh, how do you get in touch? So first of all, just do it. It sounds very Nike-like, but I don't know. The experience is amazing, and it's worth every minute of it. How to reach me? It's easy. Just send me an email or on LinkedIn. It's bar@gapbalance.com. Happy to speak with everyone.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for taking the time. Hopefully folks, a few big takeaways for their founding journey. Let's have a great rest of your day, Bar.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Accords from Vendorship to Partnership, where we dive into building startups, signing customers, and scaling collaborative, repeatable sales processes. For more episodes like this, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.